I'm Sonia Morton-Firth and you're tuned in to the Sonia Morton-Firth Show. Today my guest is Chris Thrall. After leaving the Royal Marines, having served in Northern Ireland, Chris moved to Hong Kong. 6 months later he was homeless, addicted to crystal meths and working as a nightclub doorman for Hong Kong's most ruthless Triad. After a moment of enlightenment, Chris now helps others and has raised thousands for charities. Watch this interview as we talk about drugs, psychosis, spiritual enlightenment, and living every experience life has to offer. Hey Chris, and welcome to the Sonia Morton-Firth Show, and thank you for being a guest on my show. And I wish you were here in person. How are you doing today?
Yes, wonderful. Wonderful.
Now, there's just, so listen, Chris, and I said this to you before. I mean, all I can say is what a life. I mean, I was reading up and you doing some research, and I'd suggest anyone that's listening to this go out and do absolutely the same. I don't actually know where to start. I was like, God, where do we start with you? What you're doing at the moment, your background. So I just want to, the first thing I want to ask you is, because you were a Royal Marine Commando. What started? Why did you want to join the military? Let's start there.
Okay. So I was homeless, living in my car. I think it was the second time I've been homeless in my life, and so what, I was 17, 18, and my friend Dan, his father was a sergeant major in the Falklands conflict, right? So quite a legendary figure in the Royal Marines. So when Dan and I left school, and I think I passed 2 exams and failed all the rest, he did likewise, and he went off and did something called the PRMC, the Potential Royal Marines course, and it's a 3-day basically blast at the Commando Training Centre in Lympstone in Devon, where they put you through 3 days of full-bore, full-on instruction into, like, this is Royal Marines life. You know, you do all the assault courses, the endurance course. They're looking for you to show teamwork. You listen to military exercises. You've got to go up on the high diving board, and just when the instructor says you just got to fall backwards, like we see on that Ant Middleton's SAS program. And it was it's an amazing experience. For me, passing that was better than actually passing the 8 months of grueling training and getting my green lid, right? And so Dan had passed it, and he came round, knocks on my car window, or wherever I was at the time, went, I've just joined the Royal Marines, but you could never do it. And not having had the most stable of upbringings, hence the fact I'm in my car at 17.
Well, I was just about to say, how does he get into that situation?
Well, without kind of going over my childhood, which I kind of get asked to do in every podcast, which is understand.
It's quite interesting. What do you not like? Is it because does it bring up stuff that you don't want to talk about?
No, it's nothing about that, Sonia. It's just, it's so many different things. So first of all, I don't believe in bad experiences. I just believe in experiences. Okay.
Clearly by your life, yeah, and we'll come on to that.
It just makes life brilliant. Then you can have something that ordinarily people go, oh, that was awful, and you'll go, no, it wasn't, it's fine, and I'm still here and I'm still smiling, and I'm gonna take the lessons I learned with me, right? So that's kind of like, you know, I've done am I allowed to show you my first memoir?
You absolutely are. Go for it. If we were sitting here, I'd have it in front of me.
There we go. That's Eating Smoke, right? That was my the story of how after the Marines I became chronically addicted to crystal methamphetamine. I entered something that's called clinical psychosis. So to use a an improper term, I'd gone mad. Incidentally, whilst this is going on, I got a job working in a nightclub run by one of Hong Kong's Triad families, which just added a whole level of bizarreness on a already bizarre situation. But the reason I mention it, Sonia, is like I didn't want to write another feel sorry for me memoir. I didn't want to be pointing stuff at people in my childhood and going, that person there, and because well, some of these people are dead. Like I'm talking school teachers now, but some of them are people that I've forgiven.
Absolutely,
because
and that's so important for you and for anyone to forgive people to move on in their lives, and I guess to recognize, like you say, the experiences are all part of you, and part of building who you were. Because I guess, and that it probably leads to my next question: had you not been in your car homeless, would you have joined the Royal Marines? Would you have gone on to lead the life that you've led? Or is it all, we find ourselves in these positions, and does one position lead to another?
Yes, massively. So I think the point I was making is my friend telling me I couldn't do it was like I'd had enough people telling me what I couldn't do in my short 17 years, and I didn't, obviously this was a reaction against it, him saying I couldn't do it. So I went to the recruiting office and I just you don't sign on the dotted line in the Marines, you jump up on a pull-up bar and they expect you to do what I've subsequently found out is at least 3 pull-ups, right? I did 29 and the guy's like, right, get down. And I thought, I failed. Should have done more. Didn't realize, Sonia, that no, most guys struggle to get 5 or 6 done, right? So that was it. Off I went to the Commando Training Center, and it's quite funny at this stage in my life because I'm very anti-war. I'm very anti the way our troops have been exploited in the last 20 years. But the other side of the coin is being a Royal Marine is an experience that really set me up for life. I'm not going to say it was all good because I'd be a liar. It's not. There's a lot of downsides of being in the British military. But now when I look back, I'm kind of glad I did it, is what I'm trying to say. But for young people now having to join up when they've got just 20 years of illegal conflicts to look back at, they're in a dilemma. For me, we just thought we were the good guys when I was 18. Like, you join the military because, Britain is good and our government love us, and they wouldn't send us into harm's way to make some sociopathic American banking families
Rich,
even more ultra richer than they already are, right? That we were naive. Now youngsters got the internet, they've only got to type in building 7 and they're like, what? Really?
Just take you back to something you said, and you obviously know much more about this than me. I mean, I've interviewed a few veterans, and I've got a passion to help veterans as well, and I hear their stories, and I'm just fascinated by the fact that these guys have stepped up, and their mentality is still to serve and help people, and that's the sort of mindset I've sort of always been attracted to. Or what is that mindset? But you just said, right, you don't like war. Do people sign up because they like war? Is that why you think guys sign up? And I'm saying guys, it could be guys and girls as well.
No, I don't think anyone, and unless you're probably a bit of a psychopath, I don't think you join up knowing that if you join the forces, there's a good chance you're going to get sent. If there's a war, you're pretty much going to get sent, right? No, I just make the kind of, you know, the reason I make such points is I believe in enlightenment, Sonia. It's been a very big part of my life. It's enabled me to just get rid of all the um, negativity in my life. It's allowed me to see the world for the way it is. It's allowed me to be a better parent. It's allowed me to wake up every day, every single day without fail, smiling. Um, and it's allowed me to achieve every single goal that I ever had as that damaged youngster, whether that's, you know, becoming a pilot, becoming a qualified skydiver, writing best-selling books, living, working, traveling in 87 countries across all 7 continents, being a polar scuba diver, Antarctic explorer. Um, sorry, I'm not saying this to blow my trumpet.
No. I listen. I've read your story. It's
I'm
absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah, I'm saying it to stress the importance of you've got to see the wood for the trees in this life. And if all you do is watch mainstream media, you're just going to live a life of delusion and you're never going to know who you are or what you're capable of. And
I couldn't agree more. And you know, I've made, well, I don't watch the media anyway. I don't watch mainstream news. I don't watch that at all. You know, occasionally I've put it on during this weirdness we're going through and just thought, oh my God, I can't watch it. No. I want to, you mentioned the word enlightenment, which I think it's a pretty big word. Well, it's a long word, but what does that actually mean to you? And where did you find that? I mean, you've had this amazing life of doing everything that you've ever wanted to do. And I want to go back, we'll go back through the story, but this word enlightenment, I love it. And what does it mean to you?
oh gosh, what a great question. I wish every podcaster asked me questions like this. Okay, so I'm just going to chuck this out there. Can I just clarify about the war thing? It's that, you know, you got to see the way in life. You can't let the sociopaths who own all of the mainstream media, you know, dictate to you what you believe and what you should believe and what your actions and what I've come to believe is, or what I've come to see, because I read a lot, I study history, you know, I love to watch documentaries, I love to get alternative viewpoints, is that war is a racket. It's just a racket. I'm not saying that there's never been a conflict, perhaps like the Falklands, where, you know, someone had been invaded and they needed helping out, right? I'm not like going to dispute that, but and so long as we keep buying into that racket, which only makes a certain, I call them the sociopaths, Sonia, right? Or the Babylonian money mafia, these money men that have been doing this for thousands of years. They're incredibly clever at controlling the whole matrix, right? Which comes back to the question you just asked me. And until we start to see it for what it is and how they fish us in 24/7, 365 with their incredibly sophisticated mind games, then all we are doing is condemning our children to just further bloodshed, war, misery, ill health, lack of achievement in life. You know, you work the 40-year plan behind a computer screen, taking you 2 weeks in the summer, and that's your lot in life.
It's crazy,
you're going to end up,
and people don't question it. That's the worst thing. It's like you know, we're put through this education system that's, to be honest, a load of bollocks. And I'm not knocking the teachers or anything like that. It's what we're teaching our kids, you know, out of the wealth of information that they could be provided and needed. To my mind, we're just teaching them pretty much rubbish.
Yeah, well, it's an indoctrination, not an education, isn't it? So to go back to your question about enlightenment, so as we're born as humans, we have a left side of the brain and we have a right. Our left brain is your kind of, let's call it your functional, like likes being told what to do, likes queuing up, likes order. You know, it's generally going to assume that somebody in authority is good. You know, they've got your best in. You know, this is kind of left brain. Right brain is the side of the brain where you develop empathy, understanding, intuition, rationality. You have the ability to look at a situation and not just dive into the, let's call it the left-hand side of that, you know, one part of that narrative and go, oh, blooming, you know, and you hear, when you start hearing people use terms like, oh, he's a brutal dictator, and all these cliches that the sociopaths put into their media to just get people to regurgitate and repeat. And let's not talk about the current situation, because we'll both get ourselves in trouble. But you know, there's never been a more perfect example of just repetition of left brain thinking, right? Let's call it non-thinking.
It's not. It is non-thinking.
Yeah.
I agree, and it's, you know, you just put the box on, the TV on, and that's all that. It's a brainwash, right?
Yes, it's a brainwash, and people, we, you know, you can call it many things. A lot of people refer to it as the matrix, you know, and when you're in the matrix, you don't realize you're in it. So this is your reality. Well, I was really lucky in as far as my addiction was driving me to death. I was going to die, Sonia. You know, you can only stick needles in your arms 12 times a day for so long before either your health is going to give out, or you're going to have an accident, right?
Should we go back to that? Well, I'll let you finish. Sorry,
yeah,
because I'm dying to explore that.
So nature is very clever in these circumstances. I know it sounds incredible to hear, but it really is. And what happens is you get to a point in that addiction where everything is just an all-time low. I mean, to give some examples, your physical health is suffered, your mental health is shattered, your sense of self is smashed to hell, your the way society treats you is just nothing short of awful. You can't feed yourself because your psychology is so programmed to keep wanting to take, in my case it was a drug, but for some people it can be shopping, sex, gambling, you know, whatever alcohol, whatever it might be. And eventually your life gets ground down to this very deep, dark point where you're incredibly lonely. I was physically shivering cold. My family could no longer deal with me, so I hadn't seen them for months. All my friends just went, and to be honest, I don't know if I actually blame them. You know, I was kind of in this bubble. You know, this is what I did, right? My house was just smashed to hell. Luckily, I still kept the roof over my head, but only just. And in that very deep, dark moment, that was my enlightenment, Sonia. You know, I literally woke up shivering one day. The light was shining through the blinds in my front room, and I hadn't been to, you know, bed. I mean, I hadn't been to bed for a year and a half. I just slept on a shitty sofa bed in a sleeping bag that I'd stolen from a heroin dealer. And you know, it was just a period of my life, right? It just was. I'm probably not selling it very well. You know, my fortnightly shop was £1.87. I had to feed myself for 2 weeks with less than £2, right?
Well, that doesn't get you a cup of coffee.
Yeah, exactly. Back then you could get like a 27p loaf, like white sliced bread.
The disgusting, the stuff like that's like soft.
Yeah.
Like
you could get a big tub of margarine, which was, you know, like 17p or so. So yes, to go back to the Enlightenment, in suddenly in one single moment, and there was a whole range of circumstances that brought this moment in my life about. You know, it were lots of things. I can hear the children in my street playing football outside, and kids not being judgmental like adults. They used to think the world of me, Sonia. You know, they'd come and knock on the door. Chris, you're gonna come and play football, and I was like the only adult in a whole housing estate that ever gave time for any of the children in the community. I mean, I'm now a qualified youth worker, but I wasn't even that then. I just saw it as like, you know, I didn't want to be that adult that kids are afraid of. And when I was a kid, it's like you were afraid of pretty much all adults. They were pretty, you know, most of them were abusive, because it's just how it was in the 70s, you know?
Oh, yeah, I remember.
So, you know, I've said this before on podcasts, but people listening will think I'm crazy when I say this, if you're from the younger generation. But back in the 70s, anyone could hit you, right? And half the time they hit you.
And they did.
Got,
I remember, sorry, Mum, if you're watching this, my mum used to wallop me, and now you wouldn't be able to get away with the stuff that you could get away with back then.
Back then, some guy walking down the street, walk across the street, belt you around the head.
Don't you give me that, my young son. Boom. Yeah, I can see it.
Well, here's the thing, Sonia. I'd go home. My mum would notice something. She'd go, "What's the matter with you?" I'm like, "Oh, nothing, Mum. Some bloke just hit me." She's like, "What? Some bloke just hit? Why?" Well, no, she said, "Why didn't you tell me?" Well, I didn't tell her, Sonny, because I thought that was no. I'm 5 years old, for crying out. I thought that's normal. That's what adults do. They hurt, you know. This is how they treat children, right? So anyway, coming back to my situation, so I had this really great relationship with the kids in my street, right? But I got myself to the point through addiction had got me to the point where I could no longer go outside the front door. I was ashamed of myself, you know. I was starting to realize I was living a life that it started off good. In the early days of taking drugs, it was just absolutely, you know, just brilliant. I learned loads about myself. I learned loads of stuff that my parents' generation had never taught me. I found out I could.
What did you learn about yourself? Do you think the drugs opened you up?
Yeah, well, I learned that we're all equal, that there isn't the class society is a social construction, and that actually, you know, like a lawyer or an accountant isn't a better class of person than you know, someone who sweeps the street. In fact, actually, the guy sweeping probably more down to earth than these cats, you know.
Yeah.
It might sound silly to people now, but back then we lived in a very much a class-based system. Everything was on, like, you know, it wasn't about becoming a whole human being, a well-rounded person, a loving, caring, empathic person that gives to society. It was about how greedy can you be, how much money can you earn, how, you know, if you can cheat your way there. Well, most of the, you know, a lot of these people do, or they're born into it, right? And you know, that's not helpful, Sonia, is it, to teach children this? It's not helpful. All it does is serve the status quo, to maintain this oppressive pyramid structure in life, where the all the power goes upwards. And so it's stuff like that. It was learning that things like, when I was at school, I had too much going on in my personal life to be able to concentrate in school. So I wasn't a failure. I was just a person that kind of education didn't suit me at that time. Yeah. Right.
I don't think it suits a lot of kids, to be honest. I think we've just got to this system where if you don't fit, you fail. And then again, we've labeled the children again a failure, which gives them more insecurities when they grow up, which is just wrong. How can a child be a failure? It's just what the whole thing is wrong as far as I'm concerned.
Yes. So I learned that you know, it was a business that took me out to Hong Kong after I left the Marines. I'd started this business, and I'm I'm quite an obsessive person because I get very passionate about what I find that I like, and then bang, I just want to hammer it till I get good at it, right? So I think that's
How
maybe,
old were you at this point, Chris? So you've done your stint in the Royal Marines.
yeah, 25 when I left the Marines.
And had you seen any? I mean, look, this sounds very. It might sound very naive from somebody who hasn't served, but did you see atrocities? Did you suffer with any PTSD, or if you look at that?
Yeah, being a Marine is an atrocity. Joke. It's funny, Sonia, actually. To answer your question, so I don't get sidetracked, I served in the Northern Ireland conflict. Okay. So
Wow.
when I was in training and they said, what unit do you want to put in for? When we've got 3 commando units in the Marines, or we did back then, I put in for 4-2 Commando, which is based near Plymouth, because I knew that they were going into battle, basically, right? You know, they were going to go into the Northern Ireland conflict. And I thought, if I'm going to do my time in the Marines, I want to go to war. You know, that's just, if there's a war, I want to be in it. And at that time, it was the, you know, the original war on terror. When we were there, one of our brothers was shot dead, I think round about the 2nd week. In my company, so basically in the barracks I lived in, with this chap was part of my company, so it affected us on a fairly, you know, like a group level. It wasn't like, oh, it's some guy in another, you know, in another company, and it actually, like, it was a guy that I had just let out the gate. Literally, I'd open the gate for this patrol to go out, or I'd open one of the 2 gates, and seconds later, he just said, bang, 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 all these rounds going off. And yeah, even before that, the first time we ran out of this camp gate, whenever you run out the gate on operations, you always zigzag, because the enemy knows you will be coming out of that gate at some point, and there's always the chance to have a sniper waiting for you, right? So you always zigzag. The first time we went out that gate, we zigzagged, and boom, this huge explosion went off. Immediately, first thing you do is cock your weapon, take cover. Your brick commander, that's your team commander, gets on the radio to find, or listens into the radio to find out what's happened. If it's you that's been hit, and we were hit twice, like personally, like the 4 of us, we were shot at twice. But the commander listens to the radio to find out what's going on. If you've been hit, he has to give a contact report over the radio and say whether we got casualties or not. So a little while later, so we've had, first day we went out the gate, this explosion went off, right? It was at the back road that ran along the back of our camp. There was another, there was a sanger there, which is a lookout post, right? Like a guard post. So as we'd run out the front gate, the IRA had basically bombed this sanger, which was on the road behind the back gate. Then, of course, we lost our Oppo, as we call our colleagues, to this, to being shot dead. Then we went up into the Ardougne area of Belfast, and as we broke out into diamond formation, as we went across this small park, a sniper opened up on us from behind. So you're on patrol, you're in the middle of I'm going to call it a British city, but I don't mean to upset, I don't take sides, right? Yeah. But technically it was a British city, right? You just hear bang, 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 all of, you know, out the blue, the grass at my feet is flicking up like you see in the like the bloody cowboy films, right? Took cover. When I look back to try and locate where this sniper is, it's actually technically a gunman because he wasn't using a sniper rifle. When I look back to try and locate where the rounds are coming from, our Oppo jock is laid spark out on the ground. So he's been hit, right? So I was the first aider. So as I started running back to get him, he looked up and you could just see the shock on his, you know, we're all trying to work out what is how it's in that moment, Sonia. It's really hard to work out like what is going on, you know, what you're training. I know it's cliche, but your training really does kick in. And Jock just grabs his equipment, which has been thrown all around him, and just comes hammering it over to dive behind this little building where we were, right? At which point he's going, I'm hit, I'm fucking hit, I'm hit. I'm ripping open his combat jacket and his Aniba jacket, that's his bulletproof vest, and I'm, Jock, you're not fucking hit, mate. You're not hit. I am. I'm hit. I'm hit. I'm hit. Right. Anyway, turns out a sniper had opened up on us from the back of the Ardoyne, which is a very hardened Irish Republican housing estate in Belfast. And first of all, his first round had taken the antenna off Jock's equipment. The second round had gone through his rifle sling, and you got, because he's what we call tail end Charlie, he's facing backwards, so he's facing the guy that's shooting him, right? Obviously not realizing, because this is happening, you know, supersonic speed, that he's been the third round smacked him straight in the chest.
Yeah.
It didn't even hit the fiberglass plate that you wear over your heart. It actually just hit. It's like a fiberglass jacket, you know. It hit the jacket, and of course it spun Jock around. His equipment just literally, his rifle flew that way. His electronic equipment flew that way. And then of course there was 8 rounds fired. So the next 5 rounds was fired at me. That's why the ground is flicking up. But by this time I'm running, you know, I'm running too fast for the guy to get me. And so yeah, that was it. Anyone who served in Belfast that year knows the incident I'm talking about. And it's,
why did you leave?
Oh, why did I leave? So I got to see active service. So, you know, I felt like I had that experience. We did Arctic warfare training up in the north of Norway, which is absolutely, looking back, one of the best experiences of my life. Although it was, you know, back when I was in, you had a few tough old mean characters. I'm told it's changed now, right? You had a lot of people that had been in the Falklands conflict, seen stuff that people are not really supposed to see. And I'm just saying I'm very conscious of always not painting just a glorious picture of being in the military, because it's not always like that.
No, I think you should paint the real the picture how you saw it. We've all got our own realities, right?
Yeah, you know, sometimes you can meet people and they're just out to make your life a misery, and that's, you know, that's a big old thing when they're you know, 18 stone commando and you're like 9.5 stone.
Yeah.
But talking in general terms, just amazing to live in a snow cave, to learn to ski cross country, wearing all your Bergen and carrying your rifle, and crashing through the ice, doing the ice breaking drills, which which is just, people pay money for all that sort of stuff now, don't they?
Sounds like your ultimate boys tour, your adrenaline rush.
Yeah. So I did all that, and then I was very fortunate, Sonia. I spent my last, I spent about 13 or so months, I can't remember exactly, on an aircraft carrier, just one of 12 Marines on board HMS Invincible. And we got to travel, not the whole world, but we got to travel some really nice places. Like we sailed to Barbados once, and we were also the first ship with women on board. So the first ship to have wrens. So there was this real, party atmosphere, you could say. And it was just a very...
stories that stick out there?
Well, I'm not sure what I'm allowed to say without bringing certain militaries into disrepute, but yes, yeah, all the things that people would imagine went on. For example, you had like high up commanders in the Navy were getting court-martialed because it found out they were having some affair with one of the ranks or something. It was silly stuff like this. There were two wrens that went AWOL. Okay, when we got to some foreign port, they just jumped ship, and then for the next year, they sent the captain of the ship postcards from everywhere that they went. To say that it was probably a fair bit of nookie going on that's always going to happen, isn't it? It's obviously, it was strictly forbidden, but you didn't want to get caught, but it went on. But it was amazing. And my final 4 years in the Corps, I was just predominantly doing guard duty. I'd been risen to the dizzy heights of Lance Corporal, which in the Marines is just referred to as corporal, and I was down for the command course, which was to become a full corporal. But while this period of my life happened, I'd already bought a house, which was one of the better decisions I made in this life. And I got involved in a network marketing company. It was called Quorum International, for the older folks out there, or people my age that might remember it. And I really gave it a year of hard work. Built a bit of a network in the UK, but it was always hard work. Got something going in the Netherlands. Rose to a position they called Silver Executive Distributor, which was an executive ranking in the network distribution, right? Meaning like you've got to be doing something right to get there. And then, just out of pure happenstance, Sonia, I got put in touch with a guy in the Hong Kong army. So the British Army in Hong Kong, rather. So Hong Kong Chinese guy called Vance. And Vance was really good at networking. He'd done it. He was big in the Amway Corporation, right? And cut long story short, I sponsored him into my network, and he went on to build the biggest network marketing organization in the Asia Pacific for this company, Quorum International. And he's in what we call our downline. So all the business he does, I get 5% of, right?
So at this point, you're raking it in, presumably, this guy's doing that.
In that first month, he went out and shifted about $100,000 worth of product, and of course I get 5%. So my check was £2,700. My military money for the month was only 1,000. So
that, I guess, was that sort of the right? I'm going over to Hong Kong at this stage, just as well.
Yes, exactly. At that moment, I thought, right, I'm being heralded by this company as Chris Thrall, biggest business in the Asia Pacific, you know, he's our guy, he's the next diamond of Coram into, you know, this is just what it was, Sonia. You know, had the company had a bit more foresight and a bit of a better marketing strategy, it would have lasted longer. But by the time I got to Hong Kong, these products, which had been really good in the early days, just started to become stupid. Like, they were trying to sell a garden shed alarm in Hong Kong. Well, you know, you don't need to be Einstein to know in Hong Kong everyone lives in apartments. They don't have garden sheds.
Back then, Chris, because I know we've talked about sort of your enlightenment and your views on society. Back then, were you attracted by the success and the money?
Yeah. Well, probably what drove me was, you know, the fact that you're making it in capitalist society, aren't you? You know, I had a beautiful white BMW.
I'm laughing because my dad used to have one as well. I think he's still got it.
Yeah, I think they were called D series or something, but you know, it's fuel injection, and when I rocked up in it, my mates would go, "What the fuck? Where did you get that?" And to be honest, I think I borrowed the money. I cashed in some endowment policy for it. I wasn't earning it off the business, but I had a mobile phone. They weren't quite the brick size that they were when they first came out, but I had this, like, it was like something like this, you know, with a big plastic aerial on it. And yeah, when you're young, naive, and you live in a matrix, you're hitting all the right markers, aren't you? You know, that's it. There were other things going on in my life back then that, you know, there were just other things of that kind of old life as it were, and they all kind of fed into each other. So yeah, cut long story short, by the time I got out to Hong Kong, the parent company, so Coram, had collapsed. Not it wasn't anything that I could have done, or that, you know, other than not having the foresight to realize a bit earlier maybe that this company isn't really going anywhere. And as I said before, Sonia, within about 7 months, I was pretty much chronically addicted to crystal meth. So
I mean, when did you even start the crystal meths? Because I don't know a lot about crystal meths. But is it a drug that when you take it, you sort of get addicted straight away, or is it something that you need to be having quite a lot of it?
It's a really, I think it's horses for courses, Sonia, with substance use, right? Somebody, what is one man's potion is another man's poison. They're like, I don't want, it's like when you meet people that don't drink, isn't it? And I try not to now, right? And, you know, for the most part, don't really drink these days, or certainly nothing like I used to. But I met people, like, I got a friend, he's never had a drink. He's just like, you're like, oh, your parents, were they, you know, they had problematic alcohol users? No, I just never wanted to have a drink.
Yeah, no, I feeling if I went out with a guy once, like, yeah, but anyway. No,
I want to shake them and go and drink, have a pint.
I'm a bit of the opposite. I quite like to experience different things. That doesn't mean that I'm going to go on and carry on doing it, but I sort of, you know, within reason, I like to experience different things. Anyway, going back to your story.
Yeah, so just in a sort of short synopsis, because I'm also a substance misuse specialist. I've worked in a community clinic for 3 years, predominantly treating problematic heroin users, working out the methadone prescriptions and all this sort of stuff. And that's a whole nother load of politics again. But so basically, you've got childhood trauma is the driver of the main driver of addiction, right? So trying to mask the pain that you've had inflicted upon you as a toddler, which you then carry through life. Someone comes along and goes, drink that or smoke this or bloody
And
pop that,
and it is
and
quite,
sudden,
it's quite funny because two siblings could have obviously be brought up with the same parental situation and yet have very different childhood experiences.
yes,
And that's what I found. I mean, for example, myself and my brother, I know I've sort of had, not a terrible upbringing by any stretch of the imagination, but I know I suffered some trauma where I think my brother did, and we dealt with things in life in a very different way. And I'm now speaking to more and more people, such as yourself, on these amazing podcasts. I'm learning more and more about. That's why I do this. Now it all sort of seems to make sense when you dot everything together.
yes, exactly. And so, later in life, when you're old enough to get involved in substances and such thing, or go to the pub for the first time, a different substance will suit that person's personality, and I won't pretend I understand it to that depth, Sonia, because I don't think you ever can. It's like a never-ending question, right? But some people obviously like downers. They like to block life out, right? They like to block out. They just surround themselves in this warm, fuzzy glow where you don't, almost like being in the womb or something, I suppose, isn't it? You don't have to worry about paying your bills, your trauma, your this, your that. Other people like me, we just want to get out and smash life even more. And if you can give me a substance that means I can, perform a bit faster, a bit longer, that sounds rude, doesn't it? Although,
about Viagra.
Yes, that's what I was thinking. But, I mean, for me, I used to just love going out dancing and just dance all night long. I could dance.
I still do, Chris. I've discovered it all again. I love it.
I used to like going up on I lived in an old tenement building in Wan Chai, which is like the red light gangland nightclub area of Hong Kong. It's called Wan Chai. It's very famous, right? And I had this aging apartment. No Westerner would really have lived in it because it was very basic, right? You had to wash out of a bowl, little 2-ring gas hob thing balanced on top of a gas bottle. There was no furniture in it at all. I had to build myself a bed out of bamboo and a mattress that I bought in the market. And I used to get wired, and I'd climb up the waste pipe that ran up the building. I'd climb up onto the roof, right? Or actually, I'd go up the back stairs, get out onto the roof, and I'd just practice kung fu. I'd put my hands on the parapet running around the edge of the building, and I'd push up into a handstand and walk along it, just looking down there, and I'm 70 meters above the ground. It was just...
and this was while you were on the crystal meth.
Yeah. This was, it was feeding my Tarzan, my inner Tarzan is what you could say.
Wow. So
and as I say,
and what was the feeling like when you say it sounds pretty amazing? I mean, not that we're encouraging anyone to take drugs for listening to this, but
yes. So absolutely should state there now for Sonia's podcast.
Yeah, I'm not.
I only tell my story for education. That is it, right? I don't suggest anybody does what I've done in my life, simply because you live your life,
Absolutely, and everyone's got their own life to live. And but this is actually pivotal to who you are in terms of how you then went on.
Well,
and I think that is an important part to say.
Sorry, go on, Chris. Yeah. So one thing I say quite a lot is, come and meet my son, right? My son is the best kid on the planet, right? He's the most gorgeous, handsome, funniest, cutest. What I'm trying to say is, Mother Nature gave him to me, Sonia, after all the stuff I've done in my life, that she gave him to me. That's my reward for living the life that I've lived. So if people, you know, just to get rid of that old school mentality of like there's bad experience. No, there's not. There's just experiences. If I hadn't have lived my life my way, and I'm lucky to be here, I will admit, you know, nearly copped it in Northern Ireland, as you could see, right? But if I hadn't lived my life the way I had, I wouldn't have this beautiful angel who sleeps just, you know, in that room over there, and who I kiss every night when he's asleep and tell him how much I love him, and what, like, I'm the luckiest man. I'm just the luckiest man, you know. And for people to suggest, oh well, no, you should have lived your life like I did. You should have been a choir boy, and it's like, no, sorry.
Sorry, I've got, when we just even haven't even touched on what you've been through, but what life lessons will you give to your son? What sort of pearls of wisdom? Because like you said, you know, you've had this amazing life in terms of experiences, and like you say, everyone has their own definition of amazing lives, but you've literally done, well, you've done your bucket list, and we'll come on to that. But what pearls of wisdom are you going to give to your child, or are you going to tell your little son?
The biggest one is that his daddy is bigger than 1 billion mountains. It's this joke that it's my lack of ego. I tell him that I'm the biggest daddy on the planet, and he goes, no, you're not. But when he wants something, he goes, Daddy, you're bigger than like 100 elephants on top of 1 million mountains. It's great having kids, isn't it? Yeah. And by the way I talk about my son, I trust everybody else out there talks about their kids in the same way. You know, they are the future. They're brilliant, and we got to get it a bit, you know, a bit better right for them. You know, absolutely. I'm never going to be teaching my son that wearing underpants on your face that's like the way that the human species needs to go, right? He's got to look at me and know that I stood up for what is right when most people either were brainwashed and had no idea, or they were afraid. And we're all afraid, you know, but you can't let fear determine doing what's right. So won't surprise you to hear there's certain things you won't ever see me doing, Sonia. And I try and get that to my son. We try to have as rational, you know, discussion about it. He's had to watch me get thrown out of shops, you know, his daddy, and you know, he's with me, and then I've got to try and explain that this man's son, he lives in a matrix. He believes what he sees in his mainstream media. To him, it's real.
Why were you thrown out of shops? I've just got to ask that question.
Well, I don't want to say the M word.
Why,
you know?
Were you not wearing a mask?
I haven't got a mask, Sonia.
Okay. Is that why you were thrown out?
Yeah, it's to be honest, most places are quite good. It's when you get some little Hitler that, like I say, they believe their mainstream media, and to them, this is real. You know, this is real.
Yeah, I mean, majority of people do believe.
They don't have the ability to look at statistics and look at history, look at biology, look at the wonderful work of people like Antoine Beauchamp, right? Who's you know, I could go on, but I'm always asking people to read. Please read books, just read, but
and listen to other different views than the mainstream media. I think that's the main thing. And well, that's what I would say. Why are you listening to the mainstream media? Who told you that was right? No one says that is right. You've got to make your own opinions in life, and the only way to do that is a balanced view, right? Is listening.
The only excuse for listening to the BBC in this day and age is to find out what the sociopaths are trying to brainwash you with today. That's the only excuse, you know. I mean, it's ludicrous. I mean, wasn't 9/11 enough for, wasn't that, what's wrong with people? Wasn't that enough? Look at
Yeah, people don't see it.
there's been a load of people now going, what the hell's it? What the hell? Because, if you live in a matrix, you can't relate this to, you got nothing to relate it to, right?
I want to go back to the crystal meth story though as well, because I feel like we've hung on to that because
we need some now, don't we?
Yeah. I've never tried it, but I'm up for anything.
Joke.
Yeah, joke, definitely joke. How bad was it? To what extent were you taking it, and what does it actually do to you? Because I believe it can put you into psychosis, and that's what you ended up.
Yeah. So to answer your original question, I was offered it in a crazy computer company I worked in. It's all in, if anyone wants to learn more on, this is not a book plug, although I guess it is. It's all in my book.
I'd love to read that, Eating Smoke. And where can people find out? And we will put the link, I'll put the link and all that sort of stuff in the show notes, and I'll put a direct link.
All my books, I think I've written 6 now, are available on Amazon. For anybody that wants to see the truth in life, I'm always saying when I do my life coaching bits on, you get one life, right? You need to take charge of it and live it, not let the sociopaths. And I hope through my writing, so that's Eating Smoke. I've released another book recently. I will get back to your question, but that was the recovery when I talked about my enlightenment, when I could hear the kids playing in the street, but I was too ashamed to go out and kick a ball around with them. That's what set me on the path to just achieve all my goals, really. That's called 40 Nights.
And I really want to come on to that. I think this might be part 1 and part 2. There's that.
Yeah. That's a kind of metaphor for the, Jesus spent 40 nights in the wilderness getting his head together, didn't he? And it was actually a year and a half on a sofa bed getting my head together. And that's my most recent book, just because it's on the pile there. State of Mind, how I ran 36 ultra marathons back to back with no training. I ran the length of the UK in 2018 to raise awareness of this veterans suicide epidemic. But going back to your crystal meth question, so I'd been out on the dance scene quite a lot, always had a great time, we'd pop the odd ecstasy pill, maybe take a dab of speed or whatever it was. And it was always, it never affected me in any kind of like negative sort of way. And so there I am in Hong Kong in this company, and I work with a guy called Neil Diamond, or at least that's his name in my book.
Not Neil Diamond.
Well, he was actually called Tom Jones. So when I've got this thing in my writing, I just think of the first kind of name that might be a bit the same.
Yeah.
Like there's a guy in it, there was a guy called Richard Burton I spent a lot of time with. He was an Oxford graduate, and he was also addicted to heroin, right? And he was the first person I ever saw, like, use an injection, right? So in my book, he became, he was called, what was he? He was called Richard Burton, like the movie star, right? Like the film star. I called him, oh God, I've forgotten it now. He's in my book. David Niven. That's right. It was just like a rough, right? I mean, one guy's a Welsh, and the other. But anyway, sorry, I'm digressing.
So Neil Diamond.
So Neil Diamond I went to the toilet one day in the office, right? A very boring job I had. We were supposed to be trading computer chips on the international market, right? They traded like gold dust back then when the first PCs hit the market. You bought your Pentium processor and your little stick of RAM and all this stuff, right? My crazy Chinese boss, and he was doolally, this guy. He was one of the biggest sellers in this market, right? So we had clients all around the world. there was loads of shenanigans, like loads of like illegal stuff went on in that kind of business, as you probably expect. But because I'm there, I only speak a bit of Cantonese. I spoke more than most, but still it was irrelevant. I couldn't really do any trades in this market. It was too fickle. You know, you had to really know the market, obviously. So my job, I'd sit there all day writing, like sending out information letters to people. And, you know, we'd end up making up our own letters and writing this bloody hilarious load of chuff and just sending it off out to people. So when I'm in this toilet and Neil Diamond comes out the cubicle and he goes, Chris, come in here, right? I thought, right, I'm either going to get sex or drugs. You can't lose, right? So he went in and he got this silver foil out. He went, have you ever tried ice? No, mate, I've heard of it though. It's the one that sends you mental, isn't it? Yeah. All right, give me some. Talk about like never turning down an opportunity. So he heated up this little crystal. It looks like a bit of rock salt, right? Just literally like a bit of rock salt. And it slid down this chute. This vapor came off. I hoovered it up with a little banknote and cut a long story short, I went back to my desk, sat there for 2 or 3 minutes, and then suddenly the most amazing feeling I think I'd ever had at that moment, right? I get a better feeling now naturally is what I'm trying to say. Other than the natural high that I now live in, that was the next best thing I've ever experienced. It was incredible, Sonia. It was as if I you know, sometimes when you get drunk and it's just the right time in the right place with the right person and you feel just you know, that first drink just. So I describe it in the book as getting slowly.
Like MDMA, like ecstasy, or
no, but it's in the same chemical family. So yes, to a degree. When you take MDMA, you get that real like floaty not so much disinhibiting isn't the word. It's like you almost like disengage from reality a bit and you feel that like, whoa, really floaty, don't you? And you wouldn't want to say, I don't know, I'm trying to give an example that won't get me in trouble. You wouldn't want to drop MDMA and go and do a shitload of handstands or try and do a somersault.
You might want to dance a lot on the dance floor or give lots of people hugs and tell them how much you love them. But
But the meth, and again for our friends at home, the crystal meth is the refined form of methamphetamine. It's called crystal meth because it's got all the impurities of a very strong drug taken out to get a 99.7% pure amphetamine crystal, right? So you're talking, this crystal is 100 times stronger than say the equivalent like bit of speed you used to get in the nightclubs, right? And it just made me feel wonderful, Sonia. I felt like I was getting drunk on fine champagne, but without that whooshy feeling. And before long, I'd find I'd want to just get high and then just do like drawing, right? Because I was told I was a failure in art at school.
So it opened up your creativity, or did it?
It unlocked my creativity. It unlocked weird things like a sense of balance, right?
When you say balance, as in walking balance, or balance in terms of how you view the world?
I used to bounce on the doors of nightclubs in Hong Kong. I was a bouncer on 3 clubs, right? No, I'm not like a big tough guy or anything. It's just in Hong Kong, it's hard to get bouncers.
They're all quite small. My brother used to live in Hong Kong, so I do know it. But yeah,
Okay, yeah, it's you're hopefully over there. You're interacting the capacity of a doorman, like a polite guy that's going to let people in and out. And occasionally, your boss taps you on the shoulder and goes, "Chris, can you go and sort that idiot out in the corner?" And then you're like, "Right, I've got to be creative now." He's twice as big as me, right? But anyway, I used to go from Wan Chai, which is on Hong Kong Island, back to where I lived at the time in Mong Kok, which is on the Chinese mainland. And I used to purposely get off the underground, the MTR, like a stop before mine, so I could walk the last quarter of a mile home. Because this is Hong Kong. This is the Bruce Lee movie stuff. This is where guys, they do all the kung fu and they got tattoos and steam comes out of noodle shops and rats, like literally rats that are too big to, like literally rats that big, crawl down the alleyways. And I would get off the MTR. My lips is drying out, sorry. I would get off the MTR. I get off the bloody underground, right?
Yeah, you get off the tube.
And I duck down the back alleyways, so this is the middle of the night, maybe it's 6 in the morning or 5 in the morning. No one else is up. It's just me. And I've got the whole of the Kowloon Peninsula. It's my playground. And I'm, running up these alleyways, pretending I'm Bruce Lee. And it's just an incredible time of my life, right? But one of the other things I used to do is hop up on the railing along Nathan Road. Nathan Road is the main artery that runs all the way up the Kowloon Peninsula, right? It's got all the Rolex shops and all the. Back in the day, Back in the day, it was all herbal shops, so selling, rhino's horn and all that stuff. You could get it if you knew who to ask. And I'd hop up on a railing, Sonia, and then I'd just walk for the whole block until the road cut across, and then I'd hop onto the next railing. The railing's like 2 inches wide, and it just meth just give you this incredible sense of balance, right?
And does it get so it is that sort of balance, and does it take away your fears as well? Or I mean, you don't strike me as somebody that's got many fears anyway, because of the sort of stuff that you've done in your life, but does it inhibit any of those sort of fears? Maybe
it made me feel totally in control, right? So when I was on the door and you did get some idiot come up, like once there was a guy and he committed suicide, sadly, because he had a big drink and cocaine problem, which I wouldn't wish on anybody, right? Just this guy had a massive ego problem, and for privacy, I won't say who he was, but he owned a club in Hong Kong, and his thing was to get bloody steamed up on alcohol and snort a load of lines, then go out into Wan Chai and try to be the big dog in all the other clubs. And one of his tricks was he'd walk past the queue of people queuing and just go straight in the door. Well, that's fine if you just let the doorman know, look, mate, I'm the owner of that club over there. Fine, bud, be our guest, in you go. Get this guy a drink, mate. It's all about respect, isn't it? But this guy wouldn't do that. He'd walk out and he'd literally elbow the doorman out the way, knowing that when the doorman goes, "Oi, mate, who are you? What's the game?" That then the managers of the clubs would rush over and go, Chris, it's just he's a bit of a dick, but just let him, Anyway, he did it to me in my first club that I worked in, and I got told to eat humble pie. He's like, Chris, let it go. He's a cock, but I'm like, oh, it's all right. I'll let him in the club. He's already in, but I'm not going to let it go, right? I was young and bloody egotistical as well, right? So later I was working on this other club, and he tried to do the same thing, right? And it was just me on the door. And as he went to just walk in the door, I just went bang, and I just stopped him. And he said, "Do you know who I am?" I said, yeah, you're the manager, you're the owner of so-and-so's, and the queue's there, mate. Well, I went, the queue's there, mate. He went, do you know who I am? I went, yeah, you're the manager of that place, and the queue's there, mate. Right? Went, ha, ha, right? Fumes coming out his ears. Off he goes. 10 minutes later, he comes back with these two geezers. One big Maori guy, the other this tall, I don't know, you'll have to say pikey these days. This tall gypsy looking guy with big gold earrings, right? He went, right, mate. He says, I'm coming in, and if you lay one, it was a Kiwi, sorry, I'm trying to do the crap accent, but he went, I'm coming in, and if you lay one finger on me, you got these two guys to deal with. So I went, you're not coming in, right? And I just stood and looked at these two guys, both of whom would have ripped my head off, Sonia. You know, anyway, later, I go into my favorite club, right? In the morning when I finish work, I used to go and dance in a club called the Big Apple in Hong Kong. It was my favorite. It was just this very sleazy joint. You could literally roll a joint in there. It was, and I just go and would dance the hours away. And lo and behold, there's this big Kiwi guy on the dance floor, right? Big Maori, the Maori chap, right? And I went up to him and I just tapped him on the shoulder like that. And when he turned around and he's got this like look of surprise, it's that guy, that doorman. I went, right. And then he put his fists up and we're circling each other on the dance floor. And then just like we laughed and had a hug. And I said, mate, I'm sorry about that back there, but that guy he acts like that. And he went, mate, I don't even know who he was. I was in that club over there. Apparently he owns it. And he came in and went, you, can you come and help me with a bit of business? he said, I'm in, I play for the All Blacks. I'm in Hong Kong
wow.
for the rugby sevens. So that was nice. That was nice. And he went, come and say hello to the other guys. He's called Sean. He thinks you're classmate. So he took me over, and the other guy was sat in one of the booths on the edge of the Dartmoor. He went, it's that guy. Right. So can you imagine my ego is just so,
yeah. This is partly the drugs, I guess.
Yeah. I think I found this wonder drug that is make me cool, calm, confident, rock hard. I was popular with everybody. Right. And then of course, that's the honeymoon phase of addiction, isn't it? When everything's wonderful.
Well, let's talk about when it all, because like anything, like life, at some point it turns around. What was that like, and when did that happen? When you when you knew this was not just more. I mean, you must have gone to a dark place.
It started to go wrong when you start to lose jobs. And it's not always related directly to the drug that you've lost a job, but it probably wouldn't have happened had you not had a drug habit, right? So I lost a series of jobs. I misread situations working for people because my mind was, it's all a bit hard to explain, but I lost a series of jobs, Sonia, right? And then it all came to a head one day where I'm living with this Chinese chap, the guy that I said was really good in business. I haven't been taken part in the business since it collapsed 7 months ago, right? He's desperately trying to make it work. And then one night in the building, our apartment block, I start to hear these voices, right? And this is where my story gets really inextricably entangled with what was going on in Hong Kong at the time, so Hong Kong culture. I'm listening in my building and I hear someone say, Hamga Chan, right? They're shouting it down the stairwell from the apartments upstairs, right? Another one, Ham Sat Lo, right? And other things like Hoi Chai Guna, right? So
Do you know what those meant, or did you know what?
Hamga Chan mean like very bad man, right? I'm telling you it's like an insult, right?
Yeah.
Ham Sat Lo means a dirty old man, right? Like a, pervert or something. Or I think it means Ham Sat means salt in Cantonese. It's a fascinating language. And this means something like sweaty man, right? So, what we call dirty old man or something.
Yeah.
And the other one, Hoi Chai Guna, means go to the police station or something like this, right? So I grabbed my business partner when he came, or my former business partner when he came home, and I'm like, Vance, what is that? He's like, nothing. I'm like, Vance, what is that? I've been hearing it all day, mate. Don't tell me it's nothing, right? I know what Ham Saplo means. I know what Ham Gichan means. Choi Guna means police station, right? He's like, yeah. I said, why are they shouting it at me? He went, they not shout at you. They shout it at me. I'm like, what? What are you on about? He said, Chris, since our business failed, I said, I haven't been able to pay the rent. I said, not paying the rent in Hong Kong culture is a very bad thing, right? Means like you're a loser, right? Mm-hmm. This is, to elucidate a bit, Sonia, Hong Kong is a very ancient culture, right? It was only like 300 years, maybe 4 at the most, that the first Westerner appeared on the scene. Before that, they lived behind this massive wall, huge mountain range, a vast ocean, ruled a land of a feudal land, ruled by overseers, where the vast majority of people were just simple peasants that worked the land, right? They hadn't had that Eurocentric development that we've had over here, right? Hope I'm making sense, and I don't wish to be rude at all. Just saying how it is, right? So in Hong Kong, it's an ancient culture. The old men still hang mirrors outside their window, right? Or they'll hang a CD and it will spin in the wind. The reason they do that is to reflect the evil spirits out the buildings, right? It's serious, right? This is an ancient culture. Not working, that's bad, right? So anyway, God, excuse me, sorry, my nose has just started itching for some reason. Don't know if it's all the references to drugs. I have to
say it's all the talk of drugs.
So anyway, that evening, Vance said, Chris, we've got to get out of here. I'm like, all right. So I grabbed my rucksack and and we went out and we stayed in his shop that evening. He had a shop in a shopping center, right? And we slept on the floor of his shop, and I'm like, Vance, tell me I don't understand what is going on. Why have we got to be here? Why can't we be at the, and he's like, nothing, just sleep. Well, I couldn't sleep because I was wired all the time back then, right? And so I wandered out onto the floor of this shop. We were on, like, say, the second floor, and there was a food plaza down below. And this is about 8:30 at night, so there was like noodle shops and stuff doing their thing. And as I stood there on this, next to this railing, I start to hear Hamga Chan, Ham Sap Lo, and I'm like, what? I can understand it being in the apartment. How do they know me here, right? Vance comes up, stands at my side. He says, Quissa, are you okay? I'm like, no, Vance, what? Why are they still saying it? Listen. And I can hear Hamga Chan, Ham Sap Lo, Hoi, go to the police station, you're a bad man, right? And Vance just looked at me and said, Chris, do you want to go to the hospital?
Yeah, you're basically hallucinating, right?
Yeah, and I'm like, well, what do you mean go to, what are you saying? He said, I think you're not very well, right? So that was the first moment, Sonia, when I look back, that I can see that I was entering psychosis, right? What the shit in the flat had to do with it, whether that's just ancient Chinese culture or whether I honestly don't know, which is why Eating Smoke is it's been such a popular read, is that I don't try to like make sense of it. I just tell you what happened.
What strikes me, Chris, and you know, I've listened to you on other podcasts as well, is your incredible memory for detail. I mean, you've got these incredible stories, and you know, we haven't even touched on it. And I'm looking at the time, thinking, oh gosh, we haven't got long. And I feel like we do need to do another one, because we haven't even touched on your sort of bucket list and your travels. But what I realized, you know, and maybe it's part of me getting old, I can barely remember yesterday, never mind like 5 years ago, that you have this attention to detail. And I mean, do you think that's
only in that book?
Only in that?
Yeah. The reason I say that is someone asked me once, they say, how can you write a book? How can you remember 20 years? And I was like, well, I don't, of course I don't remember everything 20 years ago, but the bits I remember are in that book.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You know, probably don't remember all the McDonald's that I ate, or you know, how many times you wash your hands in my year in Hong Kong. I won't, but
you remember, what you're remembering is the experiences, right? And I guess that goes back to your life's motto, is have experiences, as many experiences, because that's what you're going to remember in life, you know, when we're all, you know, on our deathbeds or whatever. And you haven't.
It was my coming of age, Sonia, wasn't it? You know, I'd been in the military, so I was quite sort of regimented, and you know, you're not really on the path, no disrespect, but you're not really on the path to enlightenment when you're in the military, because it's not what we do. You know, we go and fight conflicts, and then we buy mountain bikes. It's not, you're not thinking about, you know, mindfulness and empathy and all this kind of stuff, right? So my Hong Kong for me was, I was out the military now. I'm finding out about myself. You know, when you're in a nightclub and the most gorgeous girl in a nightclub walks across the dance floor and starts dancing with you, well, I'm 25 years old, Sonia, right? I'm never going to forget that, am I?
Yeah. Well,
you know,
it's
look,
an honest, quite a weird question, but do you think the drugs changed your life? And I'm going to say in a good way, and you can read whatever you want into that. And I'm not, again, look, I'm just saying, I'm not suggesting anyone take drugs. I'm just saying in terms of how it changed or opened up your mind.
Well, I'll be perfectly frank. I have lived with addiction my whole adult life. Well, since I was 10 years old. Okay. At 10 years old, I'd rush home from school to put the kettle on to make a cup of coffee. I didn't know why you know, I literally, the bus would drop me off, and where all the other kids walk home, no, I'd run, because I couldn't wait to get what I now realize was a hit, right? I just didn't know why, but I really loved to drink this coffee after school. I'm 10, right? 10-year-olds shouldn't drink coffee, I'm sure. But so the addictive behavior was already there, because I was a damaged kiddie, wasn't I? You know, the damage had already been done. So my mind is already seeking this pleasure, or seeking to numb what was pain, although you don't realize it's pain. You just think you're normal like every other kid. But obviously, you know, such early traumatic experiences, really, they never leave you. You know, they're physically with you every single day for the rest of your life. That's my experience. You just find ways to manage them, and then you learn to appreciate them, because like I say, I wouldn't have my boy if I hadn't had the life that I'd had, right? So I want to try and make this clear, just for me, if nothing else, that you take drugs, you've got to be prepared to die, right? You take drugs with someone you love, you've got to be prepared that they might die, right?
Yeah.
It happens. Fortunately, statistically, it's incredibly rare, but the longer you use substances, the more likely you will cause long-term damage to your health, your mental health. You will risk dying, or you will see friends die. So my best friend Lee, or let's say one of the best friends I'm fortunate to have, he drowned when we took LSD in Portugal one night, right?
Wow.
So I
Were you both
tripping,
tripping at the time? Or was he
tripping off my head on the strongest, not even going to say it, but you know what, known to man, it's called liquid, right? It's not something I've massively ever done, Sonia. We were just I was experimenting, right? But you know, I had to, you know, wander down to the lakeside off my head. I mean, you are off you're tripping off your head, and I had to go and get my mate's dead body, you know. This is what happens if you mess with drugs, folks, you know. Not this is what can happen, is what I'm saying, right?
how did you
my
how did you
my
recover? Because obviously you're sitting there today, and I mean, I don't know, when did you last have any drugs?
oh, it's like that. I'm not going to answer that, because
Don't have to.
the drugs has never been my problem. It's addiction, is you know, it's a mental health condition, and I will always have to be aware of it. And what we need to get away from in society is judging people on what we physically see them doing. That's not any marker of anything in this area, right? All, you know, you can see, for example, like somebody taking a substance, right? They may have had 20 years of problematic use, and the family's been through it, and you know, they've lost friends, and they've got marks all up their arms that will never go away, right? But they might actually, at that moment, you see them be closer to the biggest breakthrough that they've ever had, right? It's called cycle of change, right? It can be one step forward, 10 back, but then suddenly
That one
it's
step.
one step back, 10 forward, right? So I just am really conscious of, you know, drugs do not cause addiction. Anyone who says that is lying to you, right? Or that,
Yeah.
you know, what causes the driver of addiction is traumatic, for the most part, traumatic childhood experiences. It's a learned psychological disorder, right? That's what it is. And if you learn something, you can unlearn it. But for us old dogs that we've done this a long time, it does become harder, you know, the older you get, because your brain, allegedly, the neural pathways in your brain become a bit more fixed and they're a bit less flexible. But just to continue what I was saying, my best friend Simon drank himself to death, right? This is your best mate in front of your eyes. You first see their liver go. You know the liver's gone because they fill up with water like the bloody Michelin Man. It's awful, right? They then enter full stage organ failure. That's where their legs, I'm not exaggerating here, their legs become as big as an elephant's, right? Where this fluid is just unable to be processed in their body. They then go into the life support machine, and that's when you have to go and say goodbye. That happened to Simon, another chap. I won't mention his name, but lots of people who are in the Marines family probably know who I'm talking about. He was another, you know, good mate of mine. We didn't we didn't always get it, you know, we didn't always get it on, but deep down we loved each other, you know, and I watched him go through that exact same scenario. And my own situation, you know, when I came back from Hong Kong, my parents were told by the medical community. In fact, there's a letter in here, Sonia. I won't waste time getting it, but it's something to the effect of, or is it? It's something to the effect. Oh, there it is. It's that letter there. It's written by someone who very kindly offered to be my solicitor free of charge because I was that unwell. And it says, and they're writing to my bank because I'm like £8,000 overdrawn, right? And it's something like, we're acting on behalf of Chris Thrall. Mr. Thrall's regrettably suffering from a severe psychiatric illness. At present, the prognosis is poor. There are no assets, blah, 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 blah. We're in the process of enduring his power of attorney, so I can't look after myself. My parents are having to have that. As to the final prognosis, it is thought that any firm indication will be possible until a period of sorry, I haven't got my glasses on, but basically, although, as we have said, the initial medical opinions are that this is going to take some years before Mr. Thrall is better, right? So basically, my parents were told probably would never recover. You might want to think about putting him in a mental health unit, right?
So just to sort of skip it along a little, just because I'm conscious of the time. So you've come back to the UK. And I know we've missed the whole Triad bit out of your life story. We can touch on that, but you came back. How did you recover, or how did you get over it? And you know, I think that's a really important part of this sort of podcast, because we talked about your sort of journey of the drugs itself.
What I did, Sonia, forms my advice to people now. So I got some very basic paradigm, very basic actions, let's call them. So that moment I told you, when I had my moment of enlightenment, I did several things. I said, from this moment on in my life, every single day I wake up, I'm going to look out the window, I'm going to look for the sun, even if it's behind a cloud, and I'm going to thank Mother Nature for giving me this one life, you know, because I got mates, as I've told you, no longer here. They'd love to still be here, but they ain't. I live my life for them and I live it for me. And I love life. We are so lucky. I mean, it's a crazy experiment. I don't understand it. I don't know why we're here. I don't know if I'm even bloody real or if I'm on a computer game or something, but I don't care. It's brilliant, right? It's a beautiful planet that we have. I'm so lucky to have seen as much of it as I am. Every morning I say, morning sun, thank you. Right, that's me telling Mother Nature that I'm grateful to be here. I then take action. I jog around the block, right? Even if I walk a quarter of a mile, it's irrelevant. I take action. I show myself that I'm capable of carving out my own future by putting one foot or one thought in front of the other. Great way to break through like mild depression. You know, when you wake up those mornings and everything just seems like, what am I bothering for? Get up, jog around the block, right? Check my Strava, it's like 0.9 every morning. It's all a, you know, so that's that. Do one thing in your day towards your future, at least one thing. So when you're really struggling, and you've got to remember, the reason I was on that sofa bed for 18 months, Sonia, and I could only get off it if I had drugs to inject in my arm, is I was chronically depressed. I come from Hong Kong, where it's just mental and amazing, and I love my life over there, albeit I was off my head.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm now back in inner city bloody England, where it's boring, where you're expected to. I wasn't qualified for anything, you know. I could only get menial labouring jobs, which, no disrespect to labourers, but you know, when you've been a Royal Marines commando, living
Yeah,
life to the
I
full.
get it. Like the future looks bleak, right?
Yeah.
I guess.
Now I couldn't even get a job on a building site. I couldn't even get a job screwing the tops on tubes. I wasn't qualified. Plus the fact my self-confidence was all like, you know, kind of shot to pieces, right? So that's what I did. As far as the substance use was concerned, I looked at it, I thought, well, I'm not going to be a new evangelist. I'm not going to go to one of these groups and be singing from the rooftops. Yeah, I used to be a bad person, but look at me now, because I wasn't a bad person, Sonia. I had a mental health condition, you know, I had a mental health, I was ill, right? I wasn't going to regret my actions of the past. Why should I? Some of them were quite good fun, you know, but what I did do is I promised that rather than spend all my money on drugs, right, and I didn't have much money because I was on benefits, I thought, right, gonna buy one bag of speed a fortnight. When it's gone, it's gone. So I'll have my manic thing, I'll pretend that I'm an artist, or I'll start writing that book that I've been meaning to, but when it's gone, and I don't chase it, right? And what happened is, by following these simple principles, my life become irrevocably, is that the right word? It becomes significantly better, right? Even just cutting the drug down to once a fortnight instead of trying to do it every day, I start to see changes.
And how long did it take? How long did this, presumably you had to stick with it every day?
Well, as far as substance use goes, that's been my whole life, Sonia, you know. The difference is, as I've got older, it's just become few and far between, to the point where I am now, where I've realized life's natural high is way better than anything you can buy. That doesn't mean I don't still have to negotiate the addictive psychology. For example, you call me an idiot now, I get upset. My mind knows how to not be upset. I'll pick up the phone and I call that guy and he drops something up, you know, and then I've shifted my state of consciousness, right? This is, but you know, you get old, don't you? And you become a father, and then it's not about you, and that's a little bit more motivation to keep, you know, to keep it going the right way. You look at alcohol use, you look at what a toxic poison it is in society, how it brings you down off the beautiful, what's called Kundalini spirit, you know, your connection with.
I mean, alcohol is, look, I'm not going to say anything about it. You know, I have a drink, but it isn't, just the fact that it's legal and everyone does it.
Yeah.
The majority of people does it. And yet people judge drugs. I think the whole thing is a bit hypocritical as well.
Yeah. I've just, from that very dark point in my life, I've just gradually moved away from it, Sonia, you know, and as I've done, I've never stopped learning, because, you know, I was dying, so I had to learn, right?
Chris, because we are running out of time, and I haven't mentioned your bucket list, but I'd love to have you back on. But
yeah.
Just before we finish this, I just want to round this off and ask, are you happy today?
I'm happy every day. I feel I need to elucidate on that so people don't get the wrong idea. That doesn't mean I don't have challenges in my days. It doesn't mean that some days I wake up and life isn't the way that I really want it to be. It's just that when you're enlightened, you live in paradise, because paradise is in your head. And if it's not you know, if your outside life isn't seeming like you're hitting it, it's because you're not thinking right, you know. So I'm very fortunate, Sonia. I can always just take myself back to that, you know, back. I can peel back to that point and remind myself I'm the luckiest man on earth. I want for nothing. I've achieved every single thing that I ever have, but that's not a requirement to be happy. That's just, I'm very fortunate in that. And yeah, I have the wonderful family. And yeah, I just genuinely am. I practice gratitude as well. So I'm not really allowed to say that. I'm not allowed to complain.
Chris, look, we'll come to my last question, but before I ask this, I'd love you back on my show because we've only literally just sort of touched on part of your life, and we haven't talked about. Could you give the audience a little bit of a quick snapshot on some of the adventures that you've had, just very quickly?
Oh gosh,
and then we'll go into it in another episode.
Yeah, so as you mentioned, I worked in the nightclub in Hong Kong that was actually run by the 14K, which is one of Hong Kong's Triad families. I was never a Triad, nothing like that. I was just, they always would employ a Western doorman because of the mixed race clientele coming into the place. They needed someone that could stop any argy-bargy between the Chinese men who were all freaking hard as hell, like bloody, you know, psychopathic versions of Bruce Lee, right? And the drunken expat hooray Henrys coming out of the you know, that was never a good meeting there, right? My job was to get in them and go, guys, you know. So that was interesting, but I did get to see a few things that were a bit full on. One of my fellow doormen was actually an assassin, so he was smuggled into China every now and again to go and do a hit on somebody. The other guy, he was a street fighter, and they're all just mental fighters, Sonia. You know, we think we can fight over here or whatever. They're mental. They just take it to a whole another level. So I got to see some of that stuff. They communicate in sign language, which is fascinating. There was that. So as I said, I'm a qualified pilot, qualified skydiver.
And you've raised so much money for some amazing causes, one of which was veterans and suicide.
Yeah, I've probably, all in all, probably raised around about £50,000 now for charities, including when I went to work in post-war Mozambique. I taught street children in a place called Nacala in Mozambique. That was great. I've driven volunteer journalists to India and back by coach. So across the deserts, we drove to India so we could write articles on people living in poverty. I've backpacked through every single country in North, Central, and South America. I've achieved my silly childhood dreams like diving off the cliff in Acapulco. Not from the top, folks, but anyone who saw that Elvis film knows what I'm on about. I've caught piranhas in the Amazon basin. I've camped out in the rainforest down there. You know, seen the sights like Machu Picchu. I've dived in beautiful places all around the world, including at the Antarctic Polar Circle. I've dived on the Barrier Reef. I've been kidnapped in the jungle in French Guiana, which was,
oh my God, that sounds like a whole story.
Yeah, it was a very short-lived kidnapping. Yes, there were a substance deal involved, we can say, but we'll take that the next time. But basically, when two guys in a pitch black jungle pull out a sheath knife, things get a bit exciting, right? What else? I've had quite a few kind of little run-ins like that around the you know, during my travels. I've chopped fish up near the Arctic Circle, up in while living on a small Norwegian island, drinking moonshine for a year. That was quite fun.
I've got to say, and right now, I just want to be there. I want to be doing something. Maybe not all of them. The machete being kidnapped, I think I could definitely leave out with some of the other bits and pieces.
Yeah, it's, you know, as I say to my team of wonderful people out there, you get one life. If you live it right, one is enough, right? And
well, I guess that leads me to my last question, and I think I know the answer to this, and that is, if you were to write a message in a bottle for future generations to find, what would that message be?
you get one life, smash it.
Love it. Chris, thank you so much for being on a guest on my show. Please come again, because I feel like, we haven't scratched the surface.
Hope you enjoyed the show. Remember, there's a new interview out every Monday, so hit subscribe and like, and you'll get it straight into your inbox.